Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show on this Wednesday, the 29th of March, 2023. Thank you for tuning in. I'm glad to have you guys here. U.S. aircraft carriers, they're within range of these missile tests by North Korea. And you know what? North Korea is building nuclear weapons like it's going out of style. They got factories over there, and they are popping them out. Where's it all lead in the end? Well, they're becoming a very powerful nuclear force. Nobody knows exactly how many they have, but they also have the delivery system that can reach all the way to the United States of America. And as they build new ones, they're probably targeting more and more cities in the West. And they also target cities in the East. I can guarantee you Seoul, South Korea, is probably targeted. Japan's probably targeted. United States is probably targeted. Probably, I don't know for sure. Nobody knows what their targets are, but they're building more all the time. And they're doing these tests. They're just they just do it. That's why well, anyway, let's move on. Let's take a look at something else that's going on here. A huge river disaster. In Ohio, a barge was hauling 1,400 tons. Not 1,400 pounds, 1,400 tons. I shouldn't laugh. This could be a serious ecological disaster. Of methanol. Methanol is a very poisonous alcohol used in things like antifreeze and it's terrible stuff. It's just as bad as the stuff in that derailed train that happened not long ago. And if it pours into the water supply, well, you can just imagine the outcome. Well, we'll read just a little bit of it. It says, 3 large barges, one carrying 1,400 tons of methanol, were wedged against a dam and partially submerged in the Ohio River in Louisville, Kentucky, following their detachment from a tugboat. What's going on with all this stuff? The drivers and stuff that on these trains and barges and everything else, is the drivers or stuff drunk or something? What? It's just happening over and over and over again lately. Anyway, taking a look at silver prices today. Now, here's the thing, guys. This deflationary spike event, we're right in it right now. And silver and gold are not going to really take off as long as we're in this deflationary spike event until they have to be forced to fix it. And they're not going to fix it until it really gets bad. They're not really going to fix it. They're not going to openly fix it until it really gets bad. And it hasn't got really bad yet. I know you guys are saying, well, Glenn, banks are failing left and right. You know, isn't this thing bad yet? No, it's not real bad yet. It's a beginning. It's the opening stages. The bubbles are just starting to pop. They have the real estate. Commercial real estate hasn't really popped yet. Real estate itself hasn't really popped yet. The real estate bubble hasn't really popped yet. The things like the derivatives markets haven't really popped yet. You know, employment hasn't really sunk yet. Been sunk yet. No, they're going to keep going until this gets much worse. And it could negatively affect the price of everything because it actually could start to move toward deflation. It could get that bad, where it deflates prices. Well, at the same time, we got things like food prices still rising. They're creating a very weird situation out there, the Fed. I say weird in the fact that it's the roller coaster. Mike Maloney, he pegged this thing best years and years ago. Of anybody out there, he pegged it best. He called it the roller coaster crash. And right now we're going down. The roller coaster's going down. It'll only go down to a certain spot where they realize it'll crash the entire system, and then they will turn it around and the whole thing will go back up again just as fast as it went down. Because they got a print and press. There's no political will out there for them to there is no political will out there for them to do the right thing, which would be to let the whole thing crash and purge itself out. The problem is they've got it so big by not doing the right thing for so many years that it would be a total, ultimate decimation crash. Not just an ordinary crash. It would be something that would be extraordinary now at this point. But that's what they need to do, to purge the system of all this malfeasant debt, all this leverage that's causing the problems. But they can't do that because this is an enormous Ponzi scheme. It will crash to the ground now at this point and destroy everything. Destroy them and destroy everything in their system. Nothing would work. Everything would go bankrupt. The whole system would go bankrupt and stop. And we would be actually, if they let it purge itself out completely, we would go into a Mad Max world. And they can't allow that to happen at this point. So there's no purging it. At a certain point, it's going to keep descending toward that madness until they turn it around using the printing press. And that's what's going to happen. They're going to turn it around at a certain point. But we're waiting for that turnaround. The big turnaround. What I call the big print. It's coming. And why I talk about this is some of you guys might not have heard of any of this stuff before. But we're headed toward an enormous printing spree that's going to see them have to pull everything back up again to normalize the economy. And it's going to send gold and silver to the moon. I can't begin to tell you, I can't express in words how non-dollar denominated assets, how high they're going to go, guys. And, of course, we're also headed toward a silver shortage right now. And the government's going to do something about that. And I might talk about that in a show I'm probably going to produce very soon on the Delta Report. And if you guys don't know where the Delta Report is, I'm going to put a link in the description. And anyway, guys, let's get on to this. Silver is at $23.32. And now we're going to take a look at gold today and see where it's going. Gold is down $4.90 at $19.68. Cryptocurrency really did good. It caught a bid. 28,308 today and 1794 for Ethereum. So Bitcoin's up about 1,000 from yesterday? Bitcoin's doing really well right now. Taking a look at the S&P 500, it's at 4,005. It's up 34 points. The Dow Jones is up 171 at 32,565. Taking a look at crude oil, $74.15 today for crude oil. Bonds and rates, we're seeing the, they were falling earlier, but now they're rising. I mean, the yields were rising earlier, now they're falling. We're looking at a U.S. 30-year at 3.77. It's down almost 1 basis point, and we're looking at a U.S. 10-year at 3.55, and it's down 1.2 basis points on the day so far. Taking a look at the dollar index, is at 102.65 today. So things have seemingly stabilized in the markets for now. And it's because the Fed put $400 billion, almost $500 billion on their balance sheet to stabilize the banking crisis. But it seems to me that the way they've done it is it's kind of clever, but it's not the kind of action that's going to really push inflation up for now. What we're looking at is the action that'll push inflation up. This is going to be the big turnaround, the big print. They're gonna have to embrace inflation in the end. This is where I'm getting going with this. They're gonna right now a fight against inflation. At some point, they're gonna have to embrace it and accept it and move on. That's where the central bank digital currency comes in. They're just gonna once they get that in, they're just gonna pump the money out there high, wide, and handsome. And at that point, that the central bank digital currency is extremely easy for them to just keep adding zeros because it's all digital. And so what they can do is people get used to prices being higher and higher on a regular basis after a while. Once you get into this inflationary cycle and once they embrace it, and they can keep this game going with hyperinflation for a rather long time using a central bank digital currency. They can also use something, because once they get rid of cash, and that's what the central bank digital currency will do, it'll get rid of cash. Once they get rid of cash, then they can go to into deeply negative interest rate policy. NERP. It's called NERP. They can go into that then, because there's no cash out there anymore. People can't make a withdrawal from the bank anymore. They can go deeply negative then at that point with the 6 banks that'll be left. All right? And negative interest rates does a funny thing, because then when people borrow money, they can actually get interest payments on. I think this is the way it works anyway. When it's deeply negative, they'll have to restrict who can borrow money, because if you can get the rate, say it's negative 5%, and you borrow $1 million, won't you make 5% interest on that money every year, on the money that you borrowed? I think that's how it works. And so they'll just borrow, because they'll be the ones that are allowed to borrow it at well below it. But they'll charge you plus 5% interest, or plus 10%, or plus 20%, or plus whatever they can get away with, the same interest they're charging you now in your credit cards if you try to borrow it. But when they borrow it, they're going to get negative 5%, and then they'll make they'll make 5% a year on their outstanding borrowed debt. And so what they'll do is they'll just borrow trillions and trillions and hundreds of trillions and billions of trillions, and just hold it there and money compiler. I mean, isn't that the way it works? I don't know exactly how negative interest rate policy works, because it's such a strange animal that I don't fully understand it. I mean, when in the history of the world, come on guys, when in the history of the world are you able to make a loan or borrow money and then make interest on the money that you borrowed? You owe that money, but you're making interest on it. Of course you're not going to pay it back. You're just going to roll it over like they do. And this is what they're allowed to do. Just roll these things over. I mean, we're getting into silliness now. Honest to God. We got to straighten up here a little bit, and we got to say that these guys are crooks. That's what it amounts to. And they're figuring out ways to swindle us. Unknown ways that we've never heard of before to swindle us. Okay, guys. I don't want to drag this show out too long today, because there's not an awful lot happening out there in today, except for that crash of that barge with all that poisonous chemical that's going to probably leach into the water. Catch you guys in the next show, and you guys have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.